Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report and get yourself, you can sign up for free and get yourself a free audiobook. You can start doing that tonight. If this is the first time you're hearing our show, welcome. Please check out the website, OppermanReport.com. There's plenty of shows on there. If you like this show, there's plenty of shows right along these kind of topics with additional information, exclusive content, and you can sign up and become a member. And also upcoming announcements of future shows. Also, if you like what you hear, you have a guest suggestion or a comment, contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. Today we got a very special guest, IRVIN MUCHNICK. And his website is... I had it there a second ago. Okay, it is CONCUSSIONINC.net. And you can go there and find all his different books. But today there was just a big story that hit the news about Jimmy Superfly Snuka, the wrestler from back in the 80s. And all wrestling fans out there will remember Jimmy Superfly Snuka for sure. And our guest he wrote a book years ago outlining suspicions and allegations about Jimmy Superfly Snuka and the death of his wife. And just this week, Mr. Snuka was arrested for that murder. So we have inside information from way back. Guys, been working on this story for a long time. Irv, are you there?
I am, and thanks for having me, Ed.
Thank you so much for coming on at the last second. I just contacted you yesterday, and man, big thank you to you. So tell us, who is Irv MUCHNICK?
Well, I'm a career freelance journalist and author. If people know my name, it's for one of two reasons. One is I was also an assistant director of the National Writers Union, after which I became a copyright litigation consultant and then led a slate of to what I thought was a very poor global class action settlement against the magazine and electronic database industries on behalf of freelance journalists, which led to a 2010 U.S. Supreme Court decision, which is known very tastefully, I might say, as Reed Elsevier versus Muchnick. And anyway, that case has been settled, and hopefully soon freelance writers will start getting at least peanut shells, if not peanuts, from the works of theirs that were ripped off over the last several decades. But as a writer, my most recent book is called Concussion Inc., The End of Football as We Know It. Prior to that, I wrote a book, a collection of articles about pro wrestling behind the scenes, which we'll be talking about today. That's called Wrestling Babylon, Piledriving Tales of Drugs, Sex, Death, and Scandal. After that, I wrote a true crime book about the double murder-suicide of WWE superstar Chris Benoit in Georgia in 2007. My forward-looking work and what I'm most excited about, and maybe we can get to in a future episode, is my investigation of the global scandal of sexual abuse in USA swimming and other Olympic sports, something that's getting no attention whatsoever in the mainstream media, but which I am convinced is the number one uncovered story in sports today, as well as the worst sexual abuse scandal in the history of sports, and something on a scale of what we know now about the Catholic Church worldwide. Now, with that, as far as Jimmy Snuka's indictment, it's the culmination of a 23-year journey for me, because I first began reporting on this case in 1992 in an article that became a chapter of the book Wrestling Babylon, and we can get into some of that timeline in history as you want to develop it.
Okay, well then give us an idea. First, give us what is the atmosphere in professional wrestling, especially around the time of when you were looking into Jimmy Snuka?
the atmosphere at the time of the Jimmy Snuka thing, well, it was pro wrestling in 1983 was on the cusp of emerging into the multinational merchandising juggernaut that it is today. But it was the last days of the old territorial system where wrestling was run like the mafia. There was like a different promoter in different areas, and they all kind of ran things their own way. But we soon would see the emergence of cable TV, which allowed it for a national marketing base. A promotional war broke out. Vince McMahon of what was then the World Wrestling Federation and is now known as WWE won that promotional war, and he's the kingpin of global wrestling right now, sitting astride a publicly traded corporation with more than $1 billion in market capitalization. But back in 1983, WWF used to tape its syndicated television shows at the Agricultural Hall in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and that's where this fateful event happened with Jimmy Superfly Snuka and his girlfriend, Nancy Argentino. Very little was publicized about the incident at the time, but it's pretty clear that Jimmy Snuka should have been indicted for involuntary manslaughter at the very least. This week, after the persistence of the surviving sisters of Nancy Argentino, after my work, and after probably most critically in the end, coverage by the local newspaper, the Allentown Morning Call, there was finally a grand jury convened. And this week, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, now 72 years old and suffering from stomach cancer, was arrested and charged with third-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter in the death of his girlfriend in the George Washington Motor Lodge in Whitehall, Pennsylvania, right outside Allentown in May of 1983.
Right, and he's out on bail. They gave him a $100,000 bail, didn't they?
Right, he had a $100,000 bill. I think he paid $10,000 and they released him with the explanation that it was better for the taxpayers not to have to pay his ongoing medical expenses. They took his passport. He's not a flight risk. Look, I think as usual, the mainstream media are missing the boat here. I think Snuka is guilty. A trial would determine that. But after 32 years of prosecuting a 72-year-old man for something that happened in 1983, it's going to be very problematic. And I think that my real takeaway from the indictment is that the missing piece of the narrative is still the corrupt role of the local officials in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania in 1983 who did not indict him at the time. The 32-year gap between then and now, when they're saying he's guilty with beyond a reasonable doubt in 2015, yet they exercise their own reasonable doubt for more than 3 decades, is a kind of poison pill that the defense is going to use. And I'm not sure that justice with a capital J even involves throwing this broken down, wrestling figure whose legacy is permanently tarnished and justifiably so. Throwing him in prison is even the point right now. So I urge all of the people on the right side of this to declare victory with the indictment, which is the culmination of years, decades of relentless advocacy by Louise Argentino Upham and Lorraine Salome, the surviving sisters of Nancy Argentino.
But you don't think there's any chance that there'll be an investigation into the police department or the prosecutor's office into why they let this go by so many years?
Yeah, I doubt it, and the reason I say that is that one of the primary people in the what I think is clearly a cover-up is a detective, then chief of detectives in the Whitehall Police Department, now still employed by the Lehigh County District Attorney as an investigator, a cop named Gerald Procanon. he was at the press conference the other day, and he's still one of the faces of the prosecution. So that tells me that they're not going to go there. And what they're going to do is argue, and there's a mountain of new material in the indictment, which you can find through a link at my site. They're going to say, we have even more than we had then, and now we have enough to prosecute. But to me, it's all window dressing, because what was known from the start was that Jimmy Superfly Snuka was a cocaine addict, out of control. He had been arrested just a few months earlier for striking Nancy in a motel outside of Syracuse, New York. He had a history of violence against women. And most critically, he told, depending on how you count it, somewhere between 3.5 and 7 versions of what happened, ultimately settling on an alibi that Nancy fell on her own at the roadside driving into town when they stopped to pee. And that is totally demolished, both by the forensic pathologist report, which has been in their hands for 32 years, and by all these many other contradictory versions that Snuka told various people, the hospital chaplain, nurses, doctors, and even the police, which is that they were either horsing around or they had a lover's quarrel. They either pushed her or she fell on her own. It's just that the mix and match combinations are endless, and it's a totally ridiculous position that they did not have a triable case back in 1983. So I think that's what will not be examined most likely, and what most needs to be examined: the accountability of the district attorney at the time, who was William Platt, now a respected senior judge in the Pennsylvania court system, and the blatant lies that were told by Detective Jerry Procanon, who is still gainfully employed by Lehigh County to this very day.
Oh, boy. Well, give us an idea. What was the official story that came out when, what came out in the press originally when you first heard about this?
Well, very little, because it was a different era. It's just a story that a young woman died in a wrestler's motel room, and then there was an investigation which was shut down after about 2 weeks. Around June 1st, 1983, there was a climactic meeting with the district attorney and some other, prosecuting staff, at which Vince McMahon, the promoter, the wrestling promoter, attended. Jimmy Superfly Snuka, in an idiotic autobiography that he published late in 2012, actually describes Vince walking into this meeting carrying a briefcase, and goes on to say, I don't know if anybody was paid any money. I mean, these are Snuka's words, not mine.
Oh, my God.
I don't know if anybody was paid off either, but the imagery is certainly there. And whether or not there was a payoff, there was probably just the power and sway and mesmerization of sports figures, celebrities, wealth, power that so often shuts down what should be prosecutions of men, usually for terrible crimes like this against women. So that's your story. That McMahon shows up and is Snuka's mouthpiece while he's interrogated by the police. He tells all these contradictory stories, and then that's it. They don't prosecute, and it all goes away. And since it wasn't the age of social media, internet, and 24/7 news cycles, and wrestling didn't have the profile that it has now, that was the end of it. 9 years later. Let me take the chronology very thoroughly.
Okay.
The family hired an attorney.
Before we get to that, one second.
Yeah.
In what capacity was Vince McMahon attending this meeting?
Well, I mean, he was just there watching. Snuka was either his biggest star or his second or third biggest star at that time. He was money, so he was looking after his asset. But you're right. I mean, he wasn't, It's one of the warps of the narrative, and one of the former detectives, Al Fritzinger, said that he thought Snuka, who's as a wrestler, he's from Fiji originally,
right,
and he's illiterate, and he did his sort of Jungle Boy naive gimmick, like he didn't speak English that well, and let McMahon do all the talking for him. But you're right. I mean, it's ridiculous on its face.
But Snuka must have had his own lawyer, right? Snuka must have had a lawyer representing him.
I don't know about a lawyer. Maybe he just had Vince there. I really don't know. He has a lawyer now, of course.
Yeah.
But,
and the McMahon family, they have didn't his wife or his daughter run for office just recently?
Well, Vince McMahon's wife, Linda, twice ran for a U.S. Senate seat in Connecticut in 2010 and in 2012, won the Republican nomination both times, and spent $50 million each time of the family fortune, and lost convincingly both times. So that's the story of the McMahons in the world of politics.
Okay. There was one more little incident of their role in politics. Is that one time he had a bet with Donald Trump, and they did a stunt in the ring where Trump shaved McMahon's head?
Yeah, they're very close to Donald Trump. I mean, they've done that. That was one of the biggest WrestleManias they ever did, where they did the angle with wrestlers who were representing Trump and McMahon were fighting for the loser had to get his head shaved. And Vince's guy lost, and Vince got his head shaved. So yeah, they're definitely birds of a feather.
It's amazing. You never hear that in the debates. Like Rosie O'Donnell comes up, but not his stint in WWE as a character in the WWE wrestling. Okay, so continue as we were going in the chronology, as you said.
Yeah, so the family hires an attorney who comes to Allentown, does a private investigation, and he digs up quite a lot of stuff, but ultimately decides not to pursue it. As he put it to me, it wasn't my moral choice. It was a business decision. It was just, there were things that would make it too hard for make a money-making proposition for him. And he told the family that, and they were very disappointed and angered by it. As the attorney Richard Cushing put it to me, they had a typical working-class family's anger that the system didn't work for them. Yeah. And Nancy Argentino was from Brooklyn. Her father, Italian American, worked as a limousine driver, and he had a boss who then hooked them up with a big Park Avenue law firm whose name I don't remember. And they did a second investigation that also came up short, but they, I believe, are the ones who advised the family in a wrongful death civil lawsuit that was filed 2 years later, 1985, in U.S. District Court in Philadelphia. And the Argentinos won a default judgment against Snuka. His lawyers withdrew from the case. They said they weren't being paid. Snuka never appeared, but filed an affidavit saying he was broke, he owed the IRS however many tens of thousands of dollars, and he never, he didn't do anything to Nancy, didn't intend to harm her, and he asked the family for mercy. But there was a default judgment against him. He never paid a dime of the $500,000 default judgment. So that's where things stand until 1992, when New York's Village Voice sent me to Allentown to write a story that they never published. It was actually a sidebar of a larger cover story I was doing on pro wrestling scandals. But I went to Allentown in 1992. The very first person I talked to was Wayne Snyder, the Lehigh County coroner, who in 1983 had been the deputy coroner. And when I introduced myself to him, the first words out of his mouth were, when I examined the body and consulted with the forensic pathologist, I immediately suspected foul play and so notified the district attorney. Then I talked to Detective Procanon, and I got a completely different story. Just all BS. He said Snuka was the most consistent, credible figure you could ever meet. He told one story about Nancy slipping on the road, hitting her head when they stopped to pee. He stuck with that story. There was no case. You know, within hours, within days, I had documents, witnesses, with all of these different stories that Snuka told. That was so ridiculous. The reporter for the Allentown Morning Call, who did the first day story on it, told me that he remembered Detective Procanon grabbing him by the shoulders and reenacting how they theorized he had pushed Nancy, perhaps more forcefully than he intended. There was no peed by the roadside thing. And this forensic pathologist report, which I didn't have my hands on, and which was finally published with the indictment earlier this week, says nothing about a peed by the roadside thing. She had multiple contusions all over her body, signs of what the doctor called, the forensic pathologist called maid abuse. She had been beaten, or she had, if not beaten, had been pushed hard enough into blunt objects, not only on her head but in other parts of her body. That again, this peeing on the roadside is absurd. If Snuka said she was peeing by the roadside, why didn't they take 20 minutes or 30 minutes to drive around and look for the spot where he claims this happened? There was no bramble, there was no dirt on Nancy's body or on her clothing. There's nothing about that in the forensic pathologist's report. It's just total BS. And that was the line that Procanon gave me. So I knew that there was something fishy. I didn't know what it was, but, and I wrote my story, and it didn't get published in the Village Voice. Some years later, I think 1999, I had my first website under a different name, and I threw it up there, and it became a sort of Samizdat internet classic of wrestling fans all over the world passed around the electronic water cooler. And then that became a chapter in my first book, Wrestling Babylon. And that's kind of where things sat. I mean, people who read my stuff knew. People who didn't know. Snuka, became a WWE Hall of Famer, although his career petered out shortly after this murder because of all his drug problems. And but he's one of those guys, like Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler, who still shows up at independent wrestling shows and making a buck, signing autographs, and so forth. So that's kind of where things stood until late 2012, when Snuka wrote his autobiography, published it, and it had this absurd account of why he didn't just ignore it, I don't know, but he told the whole story from his incoherent perspective and did a bunch of radio interviews to promote the book, in which he told a different story each time. And it so infuriated Lorraine Salome and Luis Argentino Upham that they decided to redouble their efforts to get justice. And the hook became the 30th anniversary, which was coming up in May 2013. So they got in contact with me because they'd always liked my article. And we did a project where we published the original article as an ebook. It's called Justice Denied, the Untold Story of Nancy Argentino's Death in Jimmy Superfly Snuka's Motel Room. And we annotated it and updated it, added some pictures from the family album and, some primary source documents that I, some of which I had, but none of which had been uploaded or anything. And they're selling it as an ebook for $2.99. We're giving every dime of the proceeds from either Amazon Kindle royalties. You can go to Amazon and look up that ebook, and I urge everyone to order it because the money's going to a good cause. Women's shelter. It was at first the My Sister's Place Resource Center and Women's Shelter in White Plains, New York. Recently, the sisters have shifted the beneficiary to a women's shelter in Italy to honor the in Salerno, Italy, run by a church to honor their family's heritage a little bit. But the point is, we're giving every single penny, not half of it. 100% of the proceeds are going to this cause. So you can get it at either Amazon, or you can email. You can send a PayPal payment of $2.99 to nancyargentino@gmail.com, and you can get a PDF file of the ebook if you don't have a Kindle-friendly ebook reader. So we published this ebook in May of 2013 on the 30th anniversary. Simultaneously, two enterprising reporters at the Allentown Morning Call, Adam Clark and Keith Ammerman, did part of a series the newspaper was doing on cold cases. So they did a big Sunday package on the Nancy Argentino, Jimmy Snuka mystery. It's the longest cold case in the history of Lehigh County. And to their credit, they got a couple of documents that even I didn't have. One was the forensic pathologist report, which again I think is just gravy, but still it's nice to have the smoking gun document. And the second was the transcript of the police interrogation of Snuka. And they ran their story in early June of 2013. They really didn't get into all this, official corruption stuff that I'm talking about. But still, all politics is local, and it gave the story a push. The sisters wrote to the district attorney, James Martin. He finally agreed later in the year to have one of his deputies, Charles Gallagher, take a fresh look at the files. And in January of 2014, it was sent to the 7th Investigating Grand Jury. And the outcome is the indictment that came down this week.
Do you have that the transcript of the confession? Not the confession, but the interrogation. Do you have that online?
Well, the Allentown Morning Call has it online. So if you go to their coverage at mcall.com, you can probably find it linked to their June 2013 article, unless they've taken it down.
And what other documents do you have online on your website?
Well, to get the documents, you should buy the buy the ebook.
Okay.
And the primary, most important one is we have a report of their second private investigators from the second law firm, which documents all the different stories that various people in the emergency room were told by Snuka as they were desperately trying to save her life. And you also have the records from the civil lawsuit, his affidavit, in which he said he was sorry, but he was broke, and et cetera. Those are some of the things that you'll find, the death certificate, a few things like that.
Okay, well, let's take a little commercial break. We're here with IRVIN Muchnick. He's the author of Justice Denied, the untold story of Nancy Argentino's death in Jimmy Superfly Snuka's motel room. Now, you said that if they want it, they can order from Amazon.com. I have a link to Amazon. But also, too, if they want to send a PayPal to Nancy's sister, what was that Gmail again?
Well, it's Nancy. It's actually the name of the late sister, Nancy Argentino, as one word.
Right.
nancyargentino@gmail.com. That is the PayPal account that can accept $2.99 payments, for which you will get an email back with an attachment, a PDF file of this ebook.
Yeah, that's the best way, because Amazon takes so much money out of these small books. Forget it. So if you really want to donate to this a women's shelter there in Italy, that would probably be the best way to do it. We'll be right back. Irv Muchnick, his website is ConcussionInc.net.
Correct.
Very good. Okay, ConcussionInc.net. And it covers a lot of stories. Very excellent work, my friend there. Very, very good work. I'm very impressed with your detailing and your thoroughness. It's very good investigative work. I'm very impressed. We'll be right back after these messages with more of Irv Muchnick, the story of Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And now a word from our sponsors. Pacific West Bamboo, your premier source for sustainable building material. They provide construction-grade and craft-grade bamboo material for all your indoor, outdoor, and gardening needs. Contact them for event planning and display building as well. 503-839-8126. Or you go to their new website, pacificwestbamboo.com. Or you can contact them on Facebook at Pacific West Bamboo. That's 503-839-8126. Amanda from Pacific West Bamboo was our first sponsor. She's been so good to us, so please support her in return. I want to make everybody aware of our new members section at www.oppermanreport.com. You can go there and sign up for a monthly, quarterly, or yearly subscription. You can even purchase episodes one by one. You get full access to brand new original content, new guests, new uncensored interviews, my own investigations and reports, and we're going to be adding sections with documents, images, police reports, either provided by myself or by my guests, or for my own investigations, my own reports. So you can go to oppermanreport.com and you can sign up there tonight. You can start listening tonight. Strawman. I want to mention Strawman. Strawman is a band out of Toronto, Canada. They're good friends of the Opperman Report. They're a trio of guys who share the same mindset most of us here do, and they put that energy into their words and music. So check them out at strawmanmusic.com and drop them a line to let them know that you heard them here on the Opperman Report. We'll be doing an interview with Sean Duffy soon. You can get an autographed copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, by visiting my PI website, emailrevealer.com. We also offer a computer and cell phone forensics. We can recover deleted text messages to uncover infidelity. We offer asset searches, locates, email tracing, background reports, and we can even trace your spouse's email address back to internet dating websites to catch them cheating online. You can reach us at 800-572-9762, or you can email me at emailrevealer@aol.com. New World Mexican Women. Everyone loves the New World Mexican Women, and their line of fine, handcrafted, authentic Mexican jewelry of stone mosaic and abalone stone inlay. In their first book, titled New World Mexican Women, available on lulu.com, they teach you how to make this jewelry, and they have a collection of love letters to their men from their hometown that have immigrated to the United States to find work. They have also published a new book entitled Azuquina to the Rodeo. It's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider, and she runs away with him without telling her family. You can find the New World Mexican Women by Googling New World Mexican Women. And you can ask them about their deals on wholesaling their fine jewelry and all of the other projects that they have going on. If you'd like to have your business or website advertised here and promoted all over the world on dozens of stations every day, give us a call at 800-572-9762 or email oppermanreport@gmail.com. And now back to our show. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and the show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You can sign up for free, get yourself a free audiobook. We're here today with IRVIN Muchnick. He's the author of the book Justice Denied, the untold story of Nancy Argentino's death in Jimmy Superfly Snuka's motel room. He's got a website called CONCUSSION INC. .net. It's concussion, just like when you hit yourself on the head. So now, IRVIN, you must feel kind of have mixed emotions over this, because you must be a great feeling of satisfaction knowing that you've got this arrest, and it's probably going to come out with a plea bargain. It's probably going to plead guilty, but you don't feel that the people covering it up are still getting away with their cover up from 30 years ago.
Well, that's correct, Ed. I'm very happy for the Argentino family and for the vindication that Louise and Lorraine must be feeling right now. They have an 89-year-old mother who is still cognitively alert enough to appreciate what happened and be very gratified by it. That's very meaningful to me. I've become friends with them. And it's been, we've been on a journey together, and now we have this project to jump off from it and hopefully, raise some money for a good cause. At the same time, I don't have exactly the perspective that the family has. I mean, who can? We haven't gone through this like they have. I'm really, I'm not going to say uninterested in what happens in the prosecution of Snuka, but I'm more interested in the public narrative of what public officials did and didn't do, and getting accountability for that. And heck, that's what I do. That's my work. So I'll keep pushing on that front, just as I keep pushing to get people to understand what's happening with traumatic brain injury and American football, and just as I try to get people to wrap their heads around this awful story of swimming abuse in our youth sports. But mixed emotions, I don't know. I think, as I said, we should be declaring victory with the indictment. We should be taking a victory lap right now. We've been telling everyone so for years and years, decades and decades, and finally the system buckled to the extent that there is this indictment, Snuka, even though I think the indictment has embedded within it an element of unseriousness because of the places where it doesn't go.
I got you. Now, and also, now you covered other incidences of scandals and stuff within wrestling and the WWF. Anything similar to this, to this extent?
No, I mean, the Benoit double murder-suicide, of course, that's just a different thing. It's a wrestler who is, unlike Snuka, was really revered and had high standards, and nobody had any idea what was going on with that. And it's some combination. People are arguing over whether it was the drugs and the lifestyle and the pressure of the job. But we now know more and more and more about the role of brain injuries in contact sports. And Chris Benoit post-mortem was the first case of the Sports Legacy Institute in Boston of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. So there's that story, and I'm sort of Mr. Wrestling Industry Bad News. That was what the book Wrestling Babylon, collected a lot of these ugly behind the scenes stories from this crazy industry, which is part theater, part sport, part carnival. And maybe the biggest story I had prior to this in the wrestling world was about the Von Erich wrestling family of Texas, a bunch of born-again Christians that had one son after another die of drugs, suicide, and what have you. And it was kind of one of the stories that put me on the map as an iconoclastic wrestling writer back in the 1980s. But murder is you can't laugh it off, and you can't rationalize it, you can't equivocate it, and murder is murder. And if this is the level to which that industry would stoop, or in its foundations of becoming big in the early 1980s, to actually be involved in covering up a murder, that's a very sad commentary on not only those people, but on those of us who watch and enjoy this form of entertainment. I mean, there's really no other way to put it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned the head injuries. Just the average person, as soon as you have some kind of brain injury or head injury, it really does change your life. So many different things. I had a guest on a week ago, and just out of the blue, she just mentioned that she had a head injury from a fire, and that your taste changes, your smell changes, your life changes. And here's guys for a living getting almost daily head injuries. And then you couple that with all the drug abuse. And haven't you found that a lot of these, or have any wrestlers retired happy and healthy and not broken?
Well, yeah, there are a lot of them because there are different outcomes for different people. My whole rap, and really, by all rights, I should be talking about concussions because that's the hottest topic right now, and that's the subject of a book of mine that just came out. But it's kind of in my rearview mirror. I'm looking at my forward investigations, and also I'm just kind of all talked out on concussions. I mean, football has this religious-like hold over the American people, and I don't know what it's going to take to shake that hold. I joke that it's going to take Tom Brady murdering his supermodel wife on the 50-yard line for the halftime show of the Super Bowl while Katy Perry is doing her halftime concert in the background. Anything short of that, I mean, we've had suicides. We've had suicides of players who've left notes saying, "Study my brain." Mm-hmm. They've had, suicides of football players who shot themselves on the chest deliberately and said so in order to preserve their brains. And people don't care. I mean, this is late empire gladiator divertissement in America, and what my rap on all this doesn't have to do with the $1 million professional football players and the $1 billion owners. What I'm just trying to say is, let's end public football. Let's stop having our public high schools, which can't even afford to have enough teachers and supplies. Let's get them out of being the feeder system for this $10 billion, hell, it's probably $25 billion a year football industry. And, this is not an activity that you should be undertaking without better disclosure of the risks than we have now. But more to the point, this is not something that youth should be doing under the age X, and I don't know what X is. They shouldn't be banging hundreds and thousands of times a year. They shouldn't be doing this on the public dime. Idiotic parents who want to practice child abuse and send their kids into private clubs, fine. But let's get our public high schools out of the football racket, I say.
So there's no alternative. There's no extra helmets or extra padding or anything that you think that we could do to preserve the sport.
This is not a problem. This is not a problem that's going to be solved by better helmets, better safe tackling. That's the latest National Football League propaganda. There's like a certain magical tackling technique. The fact of the matter is that in real time, athletes running fast and colliding hard, that's the point of the sport. It's at its existential root, and you're not going to solve the traumatic head injury problem with some piece of hardware. In fact, as we know from the sport of boxing, that boxing became more dangerous when you gave the fighters gloves than it was in the bare knuckles era. And the answer to that is very obvious. The glove protects the hand that hits. It doesn't protect the head that's getting hit. And so you can use more force. All helmets do in football is that they weaponize your upper body. And furthermore, it's not just the impact. What helmets do is they alleviate skull fractures, but they don't do anything about the rotational push of getting jarred and hit, which can tear your brainstem and release fluid into your brain. There is just no way, short of not doing it, that is going to prevent the high risk of brain injury, lifelong, lifestyle damaging injuries from participation in this sport. And, people don't want to hear it. So, I've said it several times, and now I've got a book out about it. People can read what I wrote about it. And I really mostly would like to shut up and just see this story play out as American empire gets more and more into its gladiatorial games, and I don't wish ill on anybody, but it seems like things are going to have to get much, much worse before they get better.
Well, it seems like they're getting worse already, because you got these TV shows like Naked and Afraid, where we throw people out into the wilderness with no food and water, no clothing. These contests, they make them eat disgusting things. Fear Factor and these different shows. It's just beyond belief what we're doing. It's getting more extreme rather than better.
Yeah. we can go on our rants about the depravity of American popular culture, but at a certain point, who wants to hear a 60-year-old writer, ranting and raving about the decline of civilization? All I can do is as an investigative reporter is tell people the facts as I see them, and hope I garner a readership that's determined to do something about it. But I agree with you. But where are we going to go with that?
Wait a second. You're 60 years old in this picture?
Isn't that?
Oh, it's an old picture.
That picture's from 2007, so I was probably 52, 53 years old then. Yeah, I'm probably a little more decrepit than that picture.
Well, you look great in this picture. I don't know. Okay, false advertising. We caught him. IRVIN Muchnick here. Okay, real quick, because we're down to like the last 10 minutes. Give us a preview, because I definitely want to have you back about this other story about the Penn State swimmer scandal. Quick overview on that.
Well, the overview on that is that I think the best preview is just to tell my personal story of how I got involved in it. And my daughter, my oldest daughter, was a very good, not an Olympic class elite swimmer, but a very good little swimmer who was on a club. And it was a magical time in my life. I have 2 boys, 2 girls, and this daughter was the jock of the family. And we would get up at 5 a.m. We'd drive 50 miles to a swim meet on weekends, and it was just great. I really enjoyed it. It turned out that our coach had a fixation on the star swimmer, and he chaperoned that star swimmer. So let's stipulate from the outset that my own daughter, thankfully, was not a victim. But the head coach, a guy named Jesse Stovall, who'd been a backstroker at Cal, took his star swimmer to the Junior Nationals meet in Orlando, Florida, in, I think I have the year right, 2008. He told her parents that they didn't need to come. He'd chaperone her, and he raped her twice over that weekend. Some weeks later, the swimmer stomped off the pool deck in an argument with the coach. She went to another team, and we thought that was kind of strange. And then the team sort of fell apart organizationally. Jesse Stovall also was misappropriating funds and so on and so forth. But by then, we had gone on to another team. And then within a year or two after that, we weren't even involved with the sport of swimming at all. But a year after the incident, the rape incident, Stovall was arrested on Sproul Plaza on the UC Berkeley campus on a fugitive warrant from Florida. And this made it around on email discussions, and I found out about it. And I decided to go deep with the story. I was the main source for a cover article about Stovall in the East Bay Express, the local alternative newspaper. Now, the other parents didn't appreciate that. They wanted it just to go away quietly, but I believe in transparency and disclosure. Yeah. And then again, I thought that was the end of it. A couple of weeks after the East Bay Express story comes out, 2020 on ABC has a big report on the national sex abuse scandal in swimming. And so it's at this point that I realized that I was on the scene for a local precinct of a large national problem. And that was interesting. USA Swimming announced that they were starting a safe sport program. They started publishing the names of banned coaches. And we kind of got out of swimming. So, again, we've got to fast forward again. We go 2 years later, 2012, almost just for the heck of it. I called the attorney in San Jose, Bob Allard, who's like the main advocate for victims of sex abuse in swimming. He's done great work. Just to check in with him. And it was at that point that I learned what really any journalist worth his salt would be able to figure out, which was that the USA Swimming Safe Sport Program is bullshit. It's all PR. They have somebody who's called the director of Safe Sport now, but it's the same dynamic. The victim has to totally expose himself or herself, usually herself. There's a national board of review within swimming that's judge, prosecutor, and jury. all internal, and it's not really solving the problem at all. So I decided to make this my next, big investigative thing, and it's literally a global story now, even though nobody is picking up on it in a big way. I hope to make that my next book, and maybe we can kind of pick up on that next time we talk. But I would also want to say this, that every abuse story has its own features and its own dynamic, whether it's the church or BBC radio or school teachers or whatever. And amateur sports abuse is not about willy-nilly pedophiles in our midst. It's not about stranger danger, some person coming in and exploiting a place where a lot of kids are gathered to do his dirty deeds. The dynamic in swimming, overwhelmingly, is a female victim who's in her mid-teens. She's the best swimmer on the team, or one of the best swimmers on the team. She's just developed hips and breasts, so she's becoming a young woman physically. She still is driven to compete and succeed and wants the approval of adults, primarily her mentor coach. And at that point, she gets groomed by a coach who's most typically is a 30-something married guy with kids. And he grooms this girl, and neither one of these outcomes is good, but either statutorily rapes her while she's underage, or just grooms her until she's old enough to be legal, at which point she becomes his companion or his wife or whatever. And that's a really complicated story for which a lot of players own a piece of it, including America's sports parents, who are all gaga over Olympic glory and college scholarships and are asleep at the switch while they are outsourcing their parents to these coaches, most of whom are very good people, but some of whom aren't. And it's the structural, institutional flaw in our out-of-control sports system that needs to be repaired by the Congress of the United States, which has not revisited the Amateur Sports Act in decades. And Congressman George Miller of California, who's now retired, did investigate swimming briefly. In my opinion, he dropped the ball. There's there's a Republican majority in the House, which hurts the ability to investigate swimming. But I don't see it as a partisan issue. I see it like sexual assault in the military is something that is going to be addressed ultimately by the 107 female members of the House and Senate of both parties, who are much likelier than the rest of us to have dealt with this somewhere in their personal lives or through someone they know. But for whatever reason, it hasn't quite taken hold yet, but maybe next time we can get into all the investigative angles that show that this is a very, very bad situation for which USA Swimming and its executive and board leadership and the American Swimming Coaches Association bear tremendous culpability for harboring these bad people who are exposed to our young people.
So they've created like a haven for these pedophiles to come in there and do what they want.
Right, and it's complicated, and we've only got a couple of minutes left, right. So we should probably leave that part of it open for now.
It's interesting how you mentioned sexual abuse and rape in the military, because when I try and mention that, you meet these young girls and say, "Oh, yeah, I'm thinking about joining the service," and I tell them, I said, you have a really good chance of getting raped. Like, I think do you have the statistics offhand? Like 25% or something, women get raped in the military?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's a big problem. But unlike in swimming, at least we were talking about that. Yeah. And I'd also say this, that military, I'm not saying it's right, but the people in the military are legal adults, and we're not even protecting kids, 16, 15 and younger who are being exposed to these practices in our amateur sports system.
My daughter now, she's just started freshman high school, And she's an athlete, you know, a swimmer too. As a matter of fact, we were big swimmers. You know, she's was basketball team, all kind of stuff. And they dangle that in front of you. You know that when you're applying for colleges, you have to take a sport in high school to be more well-rounded and to show the college recruiters and stuff. What do you think of that?
Well, look, I'm a sports fan.
Yeah.
You know, I like sports, and sports has its good, you know, community building aspects. And teamwork and some life skills that are very important. But you know what? So does the jazz band. So does the astronomy club. So that there are a lot of ways that we can enrich the extracurricular lives of our kids, and sports is just one piece of it, and as a piece that we are just culturally obsessed with in our bread and circuses, moment in 2015. And, you know, I don't know what's going to take it. Maybe it's just human nature. It's always going to be there, but I'm always going to be railing against it and urging better proportion in our approach to sports, especially amateur sports.
You know, I hear you because, you know, my kid, she's on a debate team, you know, but it's not the same when she's on a basketball team because you're jumping up, you're standing up, you're cheering, you're yelling. In debate, you have to just kind of sit there and snicker, actually. Sometimes he hears what these freshman debate tactics, you know. But I hear you. I hear you, man.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're toward the end of the show here. We're here with IRVIN MUCHNICK, Justice Denied, the untold story of Nancy Argentino's death in Jimmy Superfly Snuka's hotel room. Several books, really polished author here. Wrestling Babylon, Piledriving Tales of Drugs, Sex, Death, and Scandal. The China Syndrome, How Celebrities... Oh, this is a good one. Oh, that's not you. That's somebody else. Okay. All right,
no, that's in association with a co-author, Anthony Roberts. We did an e-book off a book proposal that we were not able to sell to a publisher, but it tells a really good story about the China connection in human growth hormone trafficking.
How's that work? It comes in illegally through China?
Yeah, or legally. Another big topic that the time remaining is just not going to allow us to give any justice to.
Okay, the website is CONCUSSIONINC.net. IRVIN MUCHNICK, thank you so much for coming on, my friend. And we'll have you on very soon.
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
No, thank you, sir. Okay, have a good night.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Okay, there we had IRVIN MUCHNICK. Great guy, fascinating information. Check out his website, what is that called? CONCUSSIONINC.net. And it has a picture of himself in his younger years on there. And we'll use this bio and stuff like that for the website. Coming up this weekend, we're doing a show Friday night. We're doing a show about Watergate. I got one of the attorneys for the Watergate burglars. I think he was E. Howard Hunt's attorney. We have him coming on. Coming up after that, we're doing a show about Hitler and the occult. We have terrorism, about how the FBI sets up these terrorist organizations and then makes a big publicity arrest. We have that coming on as well very soon, as well as all the stuff you'll love to see on the Opperman Report. Once again, check out our website, OppermanReport.com. Check out our member section. We always appreciate your donations. Keep us moving here. Keep us going. Keep us floating. Keep us above water. And we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. More after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. Pacific West Bamboo, your premier source for sustainable building material. They provide construction-grade and craft-grade bamboo material for all your indoor, outdoor, and gardening needs. Contact them for event planning and display building as well. 503-839-8126. Or you go to their new website, pacificwestbamboo.com. Or you can contact them on Facebook at Pacific West Bamboo. That's 503-839-8126. Amanda from Pacific West Bamboo was our first sponsor. She's been so good to us, so please support her in return. I want to make everybody